Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey, any youngers, Jen Glantz here. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I often struggle with, and I want to give you some advice on how you can become badass at it too. The topic is how in the world to talk to anyone. I know you might not believe this because I sound really outgoing, but I like to call myself a secret introvert. For so many years of my life, I was painfully shy. Growing up, I swear to you, I would break out into hives when people would just ask me my name. I was so painfully shy. I didn't have many friends in middle school because I didn't talk to anyone, and I was a bookworm. Not like that makes you an introvert, but it just made me somebody who would prefer to sit in the corner reading than talking to people or going to middle school parties and dances. Oh my God, those were things I feared so much. As I got older, of course, I got better at this. A lot of that was because I threw myself into situations where I had to be social, I had to be outgoing. My first job in college, I was a college tour guide. So my job was to take new students who were interested in maybe coming to the University of Central Florida on these 2-hour tours all over campus. And I got paid pennies for it, but one of the reasons why I did it for 4 years was because I wanted to get better at public speaking, better at conversations, better at talking to people. That was almost like my entry point into becoming really good at conversations and meeting new people. But then as I got older and I became a bridesmaid for hire, I had to go to weddings and literally not only meet new people, but become best friends with them. I started getting a little bit of social anxiety, and I think a lot of that happened when I was a bridesmaid for hire and I spent so much of my time pretending to be someone else. Like I would show up at these weddings and I'd say, my name is Jen Smith, not Jen Glantz, and here's my backstory, and I was almost like acting. And when I was acting, I could be this outgoing, crazy, cool, social person. And then I would go back to my real life and I found that I, Jen Glantz, was lost. I wasn't sure about my own personality. I didn't really know how to be social with who I was. Plus, I got really anxious with the questions people would ask me. My full-time job became being a bridesmaid for hire, and people would ask me questions about the job and all of that. And I would just get so overwhelmed with the attention from it that I would shut down, or I'd get defensive, or I would just be plain old awkward. I sometimes still find that I have social anxiety, especially when I go to parties with people who I think don't like me or I'm not comfortable with them. I find that sometimes I get a little bit anxious and don't exactly know how to act. That's why today's episode is going to dive into some of the best tips and tricks that I have used, that I know about, that I have. The first trick I use is my warm-up method. This is good for public speaking, but it's also good for going to networking events and parties. There's 4 things that you should warm up. The first is your body. So when you're nervous, nerves love to stick to your body. They attach themselves to you, and the best way to get them off of you is movement. So you have 3 options here. The very first option is to walk. The art of walking around calms you down, keeps you to be more focused and not nervous. Option 2 is one that I love. Jumping up and down. When you were younger and you were a kid, one of the things you used to do when you were excited was jump up and down. That physical art of jumping up and down signaled something to your brain to say, hey, I'm excited, I'm happy to be here, and you changed your whole mental focus. The third thing you can do to warm up your body is shaking your arms and limbs. This is something that improv performers do before they go on stage. They furiously shake their arms and their legs. Think of that as the art of shaking the nerves off of your body. Your body is one of the strongest things that you bring to social situations. And why that is because 60 to 90% of communication is nonverbal. So a lot of what's happening is how people perceive you, their first impression of you is through your body. And if you're nervous, oftentimes you shut your body off. You cross your arms, you put your hands in your pockets, you're shaking. All of these things happen with your body. So you have to warm up your body. The second thing to warm up is your voice. Again, when you're nervous, having a conversation with a person, you're at a party, a lot of that is shown within your voice. You'll see your voice sort of crackle a little bit. You have what people call the frog in their throat. The best couple ways you can warm up your voice is by making sure you hydrate before you speak. So before I ever have to go to a job interview, or I have to go to a party and talk to somebody, or even do a podcast like this, I will drink a lot of water to help hydrate my vocal cords so that I don't crackle. I don't have those frogs in my throat. The other thing I will do is make sure I use my voice, and that can mean anything from going into the bathroom and talking to yourself to calling somebody who makes you happy before you go to a party. Things like that will help you use your vocal cords before it's time to really put them to use in that important conversation. The next thing to warm up is your mood, getting yourself in that positive, excited, happy mood. I like to do that by watching or listening to stand-up comedy. Some people do that by meditating or yoga. Other people will do that by, again, calling someone who puts them in a good mood, music, all of that. And final for the warm-up is your mind. I know that I get social anxiety and that I'm not always the best at these parties. So one of the things I will do to make sure that I'm in a good place mentally is I carry around a list in my wallet or my pocket, and it's a list of 25 things that Jen Glantz is good at. And these are things that don't include social situations. These are things like she's really good at, I'm trying to think of what's on my list right now. I'm putting my own self on the spot. These are things like really good at writing. I'm really, really, really good at organizing things. I'm also really good at making sure that I'm wearing something that makes me feel like me, like myself. So I carry around this list of 25 things. And of course, some of those things are little things like what I just mentioned, but then some of them are my accomplishments. On that list, I say, you wrote a book, you have a podcast. And for you, that can mean anything that you feel like you've accomplished. You ran a mile this past week, whatever it is. But the best thing to do before you walk into those social situations is to look at the list, look over those things that you've accomplished that you know you're so proud of, because it'll set you up to be more successful in terms of, okay, here I am with all of my accomplishments, and maybe conversations or talking to people isn't one, but now I feel pumped up and powerful. Let's talk about the actual art of talking to anyone. Very first thing to do is the second you walk into a social situation, whether it's a networking event, a party, a job interview, is to speak. Especially if you are more introverted, your gut feeling is going to be fall silent, crawl to the back. Instead, we have to switch that to say anything. So when you're in these situations, be the first person to talk. Walk into that networking event, walk up to someone at a party and say anything. It could be as simple as hi, it could be as simple as, oh, did you see that? Nice to meet you. But you just have to speak. That being said, if you do walk into a party and you're trying to figure out who to talk to first, and this is a tip that I got from my friend Molly, look for a group of 3. 3 is easier to break apart than 2. So walk up to a group of 3, introduce yourself to everyone in the group, and likely one person in the group will pause and turn and talk to you. Now, of course, if you can't find a group of 3, find somebody who's also solo to approach. Now, what exactly do you do when you approach them? This is another thing I took from my friend Molly. Big shout out to Molly Beck. The HHH method. Hi, handshake, hello. So, hi, I'm Jen. You shake their hand, and then the hello part is you put in any kind of question you can that you know they're going to be able to answer. So, hi, I'm Jen. How do you know the host? How did you hear about this event tonight? What's new with you? Have we met before? Whatever question you want to put in there, ask the question there. That allows you to break the ice with something that they can talk about that they will know the answer to. Now, this leads me to probably my biggest tip is to have a list of prearranged questions. And I know this sounds very, very odd, but I started doing this even when I'm going out to lunch with friends, or I'm going to a party, or I'm going to a networking event, is I predetermine a list of 10 questions that I know that I could ask anybody there. The thing with talking to people in conversations is that you always want to be more interested in them than they are in you, meaning ask them a ton of questions. So I'll always come up with questions that I could ask people. I'll rehearse those questions beforehand. That allows me to make sure that I'm confident when it comes to keeping the conversation going and flowing throughout. Along with that, I'll also start to think through answers to the most common questions that people are going to ask you at these parties or these networking events. Those are questions like, what do you do? What's new with you? Where do you live? All of that. And if you have more of a complicated life like I do, answering these questions in a very concise but effective way is something that you do have to practice. It's something that you might want to write down the answers for and rehearse so that when someone asks you what you do, you sound confident in your answer and you're not just, oh, I run a business, it's not a big deal. No, you rehearse the answer to a T so you sound super, super confident. I've also learned a great trick on how to keep conversation going is when you're not sure what to say next, maybe keep asking them questions about what they're talking about. So some good interviewing questions to ask people when you're talking to them is, tell me more about that. So if they're saying to you, yeah, I just started working in digital marketing, oh, that's so interesting, tell me more about that job. That allows them to keep going, to keep sharing interesting information, and it allows you to take that deep breath and think through what's happening in the conversation dynamic, what you can possibly ask them next. It also allows them to feel as though you are interested in them, which is huge, huge, huge when it comes to talking to people. The other two questions I'll keep with me very close is the question of how did you do that, or why did you do that? Oh, I just ran my first 5K. What made you want to do that? A question like that allows you to get down to the beyond the surface and get to know them very, very well also. And the final thing to talk about are 3 pieces of body language that you want to keep in mind when you're speaking to people. One is making eye contact with them. That doesn't mean staring them down, but it means looking at them, then looking down. But it means maintaining that focus to let them know, hey, I'm listening to you. We all have these instances where we have friends, we go out to lunch with them, brunch with them, and their eye contact is on their phone as we're in the middle of a very important story. And as we're telling that story, all we think about is, oh my God, this person is not listening to us. So maintaining that eye contact also is a way of telling a person, I care about you. Second is making sure that your facial expressions also show you're interested. We've all had to sit through stories people tell us that are so long, and oftentimes our facial expressions show that as well. It's important to make sure that you're making mouth movements, whether that's verbal acknowledgments of, oh, that's interesting, or yeah, I've heard about that. Something that makes your mouth move so that A, your voice doesn't grow stale and tired, but also that you're showing the person, oh, my eyes and my mouth are connected and we're interested. And the last thing is movement. Have some sort of movement when you're speaking to people. And the biggest challenge with public speaking and conversations, especially when you're standing, is knowing what to do with your hands. So if you can give one of your hands purpose, whether that means holding papers in that hand, a drink, a phone, something like that, and using the other hand you have to command attention, your body language will be a whole lot more smooth and will be something that just automatically happens for you. There you go, my friends. Those are Jen's tips for how to talk to anyone. What are your favorite tips for talking to people? Come join us in the Secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. We're talking about this all week long. Hope to see you there. And I just want to say a huge thank you. Last episode, I talked about how we were trying to hit over 100 reviews on iTunes. We had about 99 when I recorded the episode. Last I checked, we're over 100, and it means so much to me. So if you're listening right now and you want to do something nice to support the show, head to iTunes, leave us a review. It takes 15 seconds, and it means so much to us. Thank you all so much. See you again next week with a brand new episode. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.